Let me tell you something right now that most folks ain't ready to hear. India ain't just rising. It's redefining the whole game, flipping the table, and building their own damn arena. You hear me? See, while the world been sittin' around watchin' Netflix and tackin' selfies, India been cooking something fierce in the lab. Things so next level, even the U.S., with all its billion-dollar budgets and global swagger, had to pause and say, hold up, what was that? I ain't talking about no Bollywood magic. I'm talking cold, hard steel, forged brilliance, weapons so slick, so smart, so surgical. They don't just match the West, they humble it now. You can roll your eyes all you want, but let me break this down for you, plain and clear. India ain't the same country folks used to stereotype as developing. No ma'am, no sir. This right here is a country that got tired of being underestimated, ignored, and patronized. So what did they do? They got to work. They built, they tested, they failed, they fixed, and then they mastered, and now they sittin' at the table with big dogs, and in some cases, running laps around them. See, when you got a brain like Dr. A.P.J. Abdul Kalam laying the foundation and engineers who don't sleep till the impossible becomes everyday. This is what you get India's weapons, 10 of 'em, that got America whisperin'. You'll better pay attention. Let's start with the kind of missile that don't ask questions. It just ends conversations. The BrahMos. You know how fast this thing is. Mach 3, baby. That's 3 times the speed of sound. It don't knock. It don't announce. It just shows up and boom. Mission accomplished. Built in a joint venture with Russia, yes sure, but India took that base model and said, watch what we do with it. Now they got BrahMos NG next gen, lighter, deadlier, and air. Launched from Su-30s like it's nothing. The U.S. has Tomahawks, but BrahMos, that's a missile with attitude, with precision, and with speed that don't give nobody time to react. Even Pentagon folks had to admit, India got itself a monster, and then you got the Agni-V. Now let me pause right there. This ain't just some oversized rocket for show. This is an intercontinental ballistic missile. It's got the reach. We talkin' over 50 kilometers. You mess around with India, and this thing's gonna ring your doorbell from across the globe. It's got MERV capability, multiple warheads from one missile. You know how hard that is. That's chess, not checkers. It means India can hit multiple targets in one go, with surgical accuracy. Now who else got that? You guessed it, the nuclear superpowers. And now, India's in that league. No cap, no compromise. Just facts. You think that's all. Nah, India don't stop there. They got the INS Arihant, the silent killer. That's a nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine. Let that sink in. A sub that can stay underwater for months, creep through the oceans like a ghost, and then launch a nuclear counterstrike if needed. That's the ultimate deterrent, that second strike capability. You can't bully a nation with that kind of backup. It means if someone tries to do something foolish, India still got the last word, without saying a word. That's power, not just projection. That's preparation. Now listen, if you still think this is all just missiles and submarines, let me take you higher, literally, into the sky, where the Tejas roars like a beast. That's India's very own lightweight, multi-role fighter jet, indigenous, built at home. It took years, decades even, to perfect. But India ain't about instant noodles. It's about long-term meals. And now Tejas is flying high, turning heads at international air shows, getting export orders, and going toe-to-toe. Oh, with the best of the best. It's got advanced avionics, radar systems, and a control system that makes it dance through the air like poetry in motion. With missiles, of course. You still with me? Good, because now we got a talk about the Pinaka. Now that name right there sounds sweet, but don't get it twisted. This is a multi-barrel rocket launcher system that brings thunder to the battlefield. Named after the bow of Lord Shiva, this thing ain't playin'. It rains rockets on enemy positions like a monsoon with attitude. Mobile, fast, and accurate. You park this at the border, and it'll paint the sky with fire before the enemy even blinks. The U.S. got HIMARS, but Pinaka ain't lagging. It's local, lethal, and locked in, and while everybody was focused on tanks and jets, India quietly dropped the DRDO anti-satellite weapon. That's right. They took out a live satellite in space in 2019. In space, you know how precise you gotta be to hit a satellite hurtling through orbit. That ain't target practice, that's technological wizardry. The U.S. took notice. China started sweating, because this was a clear message. India ain't just defending land and air, it's owning space too. And in modern warfare, space is the new battleground. Satellites run your GPS, your communication, your eyes in the sky. And India just proved they can neutralize all of that. Now here's one folks rarely talk about. The Akash-NG missile system. Surfaced, where, quick to deploy, highly mobile, and smart as a whip. It don't just intercept, it destroys with precision. It's got data link capabilities, active radar homing, and a no-escape zone so wide, enemy jets got think twice before even peeking over Indian airspace. The NG in Akash-NG, that's next generation, and believe me, it is. Even the folks in Europe and the U.S. had to tip their hats to how India's managing such effective air defense tech on a fraction of the Western budget. That's efficiency. That's brains over bloat. Let me tell you about something that's still under the radar. Literally, the DRDO SYFD. It's India's stepping stone to stealth UCAVs, unmanned combat aerial vehicles, jet-powered, flying wing design, radar, evading, autonomous and lethal. It's the future of warfare. You won't even see it coming, and India's already flying prototypes. That's like building your own Iron Man suit, while the rest of the class still trying to figure out remote control drones. The U.S. noticed, because once this matures, India won't need a pilot to dominate the skies. That's game changing. You want ground dominance? Check out the Arjun Mk1A. This ain't your granddaddy's battle tank. This is modern, fire-breathing steel on treads. Enhanced protection, better fire control systems, auto-targeting, and it's tailored for Indian conditions. It's made to survive deserts, swamps, and chaos. And best of all, it's made by Indians for Indians. It shows that India's not just importing anymore. They manufacturing excellence, rolling it out from their own backyard. And yeah, America sees it. They know the game has changed when a country starts rolling out its own tanks that can go toted. Oh, with Western ones last but not least, we gotta talk about the NAG missile. You might think, oh, that's just another anti-tank missile. But no, sir, no ma'am, this baby is fire and, forget, it's got imaging infrared seekers, top attack capability, and it don't miss, it don't chase. You mark the target, it locks in, and the rest is silence. U.S. has javelins, sure, but NAG, it's domestically developed, battle-hardened, and tailor. Fit for Indian scenarios. The beauty is, India didn't just copy, they innovated. They learned the science, upgraded the soul, and delivered a weapon that makes the battlefield a whole lot more dangerous for armored threats. So now you sitting there, maybe jaw dropped a little, wondering how India pulled all this off. Let me tell you the secret. It ain't just money, it's willpower, it's vision, it's believing in your own when the world doubted you. The West had head starts, yes, but India had grit. They weren't just buying weapons, they were building them. Training their minds, developing their own tech, and mastering every layer, from design to deployment. And that's what shocks the U.S. Not just that India got powerful weapons, but that they built them themselves from scratch under pressure without compromise. The shock ain't in the hardware, it's in the software of the soul, the dedication, the intellect, the hunger to rise. That's what the world didn't expect. They thought India would always be catching up. But now, India's setting the pace. The Pentagon sees it. NATO sees it. Even Silicon Valley, with all its AI talk, is watching closely as Indian defense integrates automation, sensors, and predictive targeting like it's second nature. This ain't some fluke. This is a revolution. Quiet, calculated, and now it's roaring. And let me say this. This ain't about war. This is about dignity, about showing the world that just because a country once struggled doesn't mean it stays down forever. This is about breaking ceilings with brains, not just bombs. And for the young Indians listening out there, let me tell you something from the heart. Your country just proved it can do anything, you hear me? Anything, and the only thing more powerful than these weapons is the mind that created them. So stand tall, be proud, and never let anyone tell you India's place is behind. Because now the world is realizing India is in front. And it's not waiting for permission to lead. It's already leading. Facts over fear, brilliance over bias, power with purpose, and that, right there, is the real shock. It marked the birth of India's assertive military doctrine backed by innovation. India's defense export surge is reshaping global arms markets, and America is taking notes. For decades, India was largely viewed as a buyer in the global defense economy. It was one of the top arms importers in the world, relying heavily on foreign suppliers for fighter jets, submarines, artillery systems, and high-tech military components. That dependency, however, was not just a logistical vulnerability. It was a symbol of restrained strategic power. A nation that could fight brilliantly but had to wait for someone else to sell them the tools. But in the last 10 years, and especially post-2020, India has flipped the script. It is no longer just a customer. It is rapidly becoming a supplier, and in many cases, a competitor. The world didn't see this coming. They weren't prepared for an India that not only manufactures its own weapons, but starts exporting them in volumes that challenge old defense supply chains. When India first began making noise about self-reliance in defense, many Western analysts smirked quietly. They saw it as wishful thinking. After all, how could a country that had long been dependent on Soviet-era systems suddenly build an indigenous ecosystem capable of producing globally competitive weapons? But what they failed to calculate was India's deep pool of engineers, its rising tech, savvy workforce, and most of all, its mindset shift. India's defense production wasn't just a manufacturing push. It was a civilizational awakening. The realization that sovereignty in the modern era means nothing without technological control over your own defense. That realization bred a new urgency. No more waiting, no more dependence, no more begging for licenses. India was done playing that game. Now look at where we are. Indian-made weapons are not only being inducted into the Indian Armed Forces, but they are being requested by countries across Africa, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and even Latin America. These are not symbolic purchases either. These are serious defense contracts worth billions of dollars. The Philippines signed a $375 million deal for the BrahMos missile system. Argentina is exploring the Tejas light combat aircraft. Armenia purchased Indian-made Pinaka rocket systems and radars, and nations like Vietnam, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia are all in talks to acquire various Indian systems. Each one of these deals carries a ripple effect, not just in strategic alignment, but in global perception. The message is loud and clear. India is no longer the world's arms customer. It's becoming a serious contender. The implications of this shift are enormous, because every weapon India sells comes with soft power embedded into it. These deals aren't just economic, they're diplomatic. A missile deal with the Philippines signals Indo-Pacific solidarity. A radar deal with Armenia sends a message to Azerbaijan and Turkey. A Tejas fighter jet in Latin American skies tells Washington that the U.S. no longer has a monopoly on aerial dominance diplomacy. In short, India's defense exports are writing new geopolitical equations. This isn't just about hardware. This is about alliances, narratives, and influence. What makes this even more impactful is how India is packaging these exports. Unlike traditional defense exporters who often tie their deals with strings, training dependencies, political loyalty, and exclusive servicing right, India is offering something radically different: strategic independence, flexibility, sovereign respect. It is allowing buyer countries to modify, service, and even co-produce the systems locally. This approach is particularly appealing to nations that are tired of being bullied by superpowers who attach endless conditions to their weapons sales. India, with its non-colonial past and multi-alignment diplomacy, is suddenly becoming the friend every developing country wants to have. A friend who can sell you cutting-edge systems without making you sign away your future. Now let's get technical. These aren't third-grade, stripped-down weapons either. The weapons India is exporting are modern, combat, proven, and engineered for rugged conditions. The BrahMos missile, for instance, is the world's fastest supersonic cruise missile. It has precision strike capability, skimming technology, and terrain-hugging maneuvers. It can be launched from land, sea, air, and potentially submarines. That's a system that makes adversaries nervous. The Pinaka multi-barrel rocket launcher is battlefield-tested and capable of delivering high-volume firepower with extraordinary accuracy. Systems like Akash-NG, QRSAM, and ATAGS are being evaluated by multiple countries. Indian private players are producing advanced drones, loitering munitions, and surveillance systems that meet NATO standards. Even cyber defense tools developed in India are being considered for export. That's a technological leap. No one can ignore India's export policies have evolved in parallel with this technological rise. The government rolled out simplified licensing, financial incentives, and diplomatic support for defense manufacturers. Defense attaches were instructed to actively promote Indian equipment abroad. Major exhibitions like Def Expo and Aero India became global showcases where Indian firms started shining alongside American and European giants. DRDO, which was once mocked for delays, is now being applauded for delivering real-time combat solutions. HAL, Bell, L/T, Bharat Forge, and dozens of rising private sector firms have created a competitive manufacturing environment that's forcing even legacy Western companies to lower their prices in some regions. Indian exports are becoming the benchmark for affordable quality. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. As India ramps up defense exports, the U.S. is watching this transformation very, very closely. Not just because India is exporting more, but because some of the buyers were once firmly in the American sphere of influence. The U.S. spent decades building arms relationships with Southeast Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. But now, those same regions are placing orders with India. Why? Because they trust India more. Because India's weapons are more adaptable to their needs. Because India doesn't use the dollar dominance as a tool of coercion. Because India treats buyers like partners, not pawns. That's not just business. That's a philosophical competition. America is also quietly studying Indian innovation models. How is it that India can develop effective systems at a fraction of Western cost? How are Indian engineers innovating in missile guidance, stealth coatings, and unmanned systems so efficiently? How is India managing to deliver battlefield-ready systems while Western nations are bogged down in red tape, budget overruns, and political interference. These questions are being asked in Washington, in defense journals, and at think tanks across Europe. Because India's rise in defense exports isn't just a surprise, it's a lesson, and let's not forget the multiplier effect. Every exported BrahMos or Tejas or radar system opens doors for Indian electronics, software, logistics, maintenance, and training programs. These are long-term relationships. They bind nations together. They create new revenue streams. They force the West to adapt, compete, and in some cases, collaborate. Already, countries like France and Israel are partnering with India to co-develop and co-export systems. This is not about catch-up anymore. This is about co-leadership in shaping the future of global defense. This export momentum is also having a massive psychological impact. For the Indian military, industrial complex, it's a confidence injection. Engineers no longer dream of just making something that works. They dream of making something that wins global tenders. Young professionals are seeing defense tech as a viable, prestigious career. Universities are aligning their R/D with defense startups. The entire defense ecosystem is going through a cultural renaissance, driven by the belief that India can be the arsenal of the democratic world. Now imagine what happens when this ecosystem scales. When Indian-built systems are protecting borders in Vietnam, securing cities in Africa, deterring aggression in the Middle East, when Indian radar networks become the shield for multiple allied nations. When Indian submarines patrol not just the Indian Ocean, but strategic waters around the globe. This isn't fantasy, it's already in motion. And it will only grow faster as more nations realize that Indian defense exports offer reliability without domination, precision without pretense. India is also reshaping how small and medium-sized countries view their own defense procurement. It has become the poster child for how a nation can break dependency, master technology, and then sell that mastery to others. That is inspirational, that is disruptive, that changes the very psychology of global arms markets. India's presence is forcing traditional exporters to compete harder, innovate faster, and price smarter. It's breaking old cartels. It's creating a more balanced, multipolar arms trade network where power is distributed, not hoarded, and while this export story unfolds, the world is recalibrating its assumptions about military power. Power is no longer just about nukes and aircraft carriers. It's about self-reliance, agility, innovation, and narrative. India's export growth tells a story, not just of capability, but of credibility. Of a country that refused to stay dependent. Of a country that learned to build, sell, and lead. That's why America is taking notes. Not because India is a threat, but because India is the blueprint for the new defense economy. One where intelligence and innovation outweigh pure spending. One where diplomacy walks hand in hand with indigenous strength. One where former buyers become respected sellers, shaping outcomes far beyond the battlefield.